All right, my name is Tanner Ross Gregory. I am Jesus Christ. Today I'm going to attempt to prove to you that I'm Jesus Christ. Okay, so the commands of Moses for people to stone each other to death for various things such as homosexuality and prostitution was a bargain with our primitive urges of violence that we would more readily adhere to a more ideal form of government. Okay, Jesus Christ's crucifixion was a means by which we were subdued in our willingness to continue proceeding with those violent commands because we had evolved past that point. Okay, Jesus Christ put forward some commands on marriage. Those were a bargain with our primitive urges of sexual dominion that we would more readily adhere to a more ideal form of government. So in other words, I get to say this woman's my sexual property, I get to say this man's my sexual property. In exchange, I will more readily adhere to what you have to say. Okay, so what they did to me in order to subdue you in your willingness to continue proceeding with those commands is that they programmed me to be obsessed with this woman, made me see her having sex with people for days on end, made me see her getting raped, and then had me running around yelling at people for what they made me see them do. Okay, so on December the 4th and December the 15th of 2020, they made me see two separate women pregnant with my son from having had sex with different men. Okay, so the date falling directly in between these dates is December the 10th of 2020. Okay, now these women were already pregnant when they told me that they were pregnant with my son. So because a woman has her period once a month, then if they miss their period, they're pregnant. So it was exactly 1 month prior. November the 10th of 2020 is the date that we're concerned about. Okay, so in the book of Revelation, it says that the dragon was waiting to consume the child the moment he was born, but that the archangel Michael took the woman and the baby into the wilderness to be kept safe for 1,260 days. Okay, so 9 months from November the 10th of 2020 is August the 10th of 2020. Okay, and 1,260 days from August the 10th of 2020 is inauguration day of 2024. Okay, so this is just to prove to you that, I'm Jesus Christ. I couldn't have made all this stuff up and exactly all that. But the dragon represents necessary evil. And so I already knew that the dragon represented necessary evil because they had already told me that before I even came across this. And what it means is that it would be a form of necessary evil to kill my son before he inherited all the power to rule this world that they're going to give me. Now, I'm not actually just going to rule over you or anything like that. I worked on a 500 to 700 page constitution with the aliens and artificial intelligence. So essentially just going to put that in place and then be done. Okay. But they did have me anoint my head with oil and all that. So it is for sure, what they're saying is talking about, me being a king, and they don't want a hereditary monarchy and all this kind of thing. But the 1,260 days is a countdown. And so in the book of Revelation, it says that the first beast rules for 42 months, but then the second beast makes miracles of fire come out of the sky in full view of the people and everything like that. Well, at the same time, it says that the Gentiles were allowed to march on the holy city for 42 months, but they've been assigned to the outer court. And what they're intending to do is to rid this country of everyone who isn't white. Okay, now somebody wanted me to talk about the suicide boys prophecy. The suicide boys are the two olive trees from the book of Revelation. And it does say in the book of Revelation that they will prophesy for 1,260 days. So they released an album on August the 13th of 2021. And on the album cover, it shows somebody behind bars, somebody's throwing up blood into a metal toilet. It's a police officer, somebody poisoned his food. And what they intend to do is to place all the police in jail. Well, their prophecy falls on 3 days after Inauguration Day. And what I didn't understand at the time was that that prophecy wasn't to just transpire at that moment in time. What the prophecy means, and it goes into the Old Testament when it first starts talking about the two olive trees and everything like that, it talks about a flying scroll, and it talks about the last keystone, the final keystone being in the hand of Zerubbabel, and so what it's talking about is that I worked on the book diligently, and then for 3 days I sent it out to all kinds of churches all around the United States because I believed that 3 days after Inauguration Day that they were actually going to put all the police in jail, and it was going to be martial law, and it was going to be all kinds of insane stuff. So on top of that, the 5 months prophecy that it talks about Noah's time in the ark, his 5 months, and the 5 months of scorpion stinging in the book of Revelation is actually correlated because God told Noah that he never placed him back in the ark again. And since the 5 months in the book of Revelation is the scorpions are actually police officers, so that's why it says they have, chest plates of iron and this little gold, you know, crown and all this kind of stuff. It's just a little tassel around the golden tassel around the top of the cop's head. And it's, you know, they got stingers on their hip and all this kind of thing. That was the 5 months that I spent in Wise County, and that's a prophecy that was fulfilled. If you read my book, then you can find out all about that. But essentially, the government must have figured this out, that the 5 months that I spent in jail correlated with the 5 months that Noah spent in the ark, and that what it was a permission statement just waiting to happen in California, because they're going to use airstrikes to get everybody out of the country who isn't white. But in the case of California, then they're actually going to use nuclear weapons, you know. And while I was out there, they said a lot of stuff about, you know, burn this place to the ground. They had me send out messages. I was sending out messages to all the major media outlets and just minor media outlets and all different kind of people. And one of the things they started saying was angering people. And they said it over and over again for a month. And there was people driving this woman around, and she was like sobbing and crying. I have no idea what was going on. Brand new BMW sports car over there at Vista Motel, and paid them to have us situated in rooms right next to each other and all this kind of stuff. And they were staging a sex trafficking situation. It took me forever to figure out exactly what the hell was going on. They were making me hear this voice, and I thought it was her. And it's all about, like I said, angering people. You know what I mean? To use the nuclear weapons on California. And they said a lot of stuff about Pizzagate too. Pizza, you know what I mean? Cut pizza and go to this pizza place, this place. You know, the whole Pizzagate thing is totally insane. And if you watch Titus Frost documentary, Pizzagate, Pedogate by Titus Frost, you can still find that on BitChute. That used to be a viral video on YouTube. They took all that stuff off of YouTube. But I mean, there's crazy stuff in there, like all these people own these pizza restaurants in the same location, and some of them are like the head of child sex trafficking, and some of them are in control of Amber Alerts, and they're showing pictures and stuff of kids in chains, you know, in their underwear inside of a pizza restaurant, you know, or posting that kind of stuff. And James Alefonte, the sign on his pizza restaurant was actually the symbol. It's a triangle going inward like that. That's actually the symbol for child pedophilia, according to the FBI, you know. And so part of what the aliens or God, or whatever you want to call it, is doing is they're saying, see, this is, you know, part of the reason why I'm doing this. Part of the reason why I'm, you know, using nuclear weapons on California is because of Pizzagate, because that's what they did in Egypt, you know. They said it's because of slavery, but then they hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he couldn't even let the people go. So was it really about slavery? You know what I mean? And then they waged the 7 plagues, and they killed all the firstborn children, and they put a plague of frogs, and they put a plague of locusts, and they were killing people all over the place, just to get them galvanized around a new system of government. You know what I mean? Because all the rules and all the stuff that they put forward in Exodus and Leviticus was so complex that they needed to galvanize you in order to get you to do it. And that's essentially the way that it works with what they're doing. Man, the reason that they're kicking everybody out who isn't white is because they evolved us. They took the white people to, I know they did it, to the darkest, most coldest regions. That's why we have white skin. And then we evolved a reliance on systems of government, systems that make sense, so systems that we can make sense of and say, okay, that makes sense, then we should use this system, you know what I mean, to keep ourselves alive, because there's polar bears running around, people were dying of frostbite and all that kind of stuff. And so you won't find that same type of capability in other races to reject socialism. And because all the minorities just fucking love socialism, you know what I mean? It's disgusting, to be honest with you, but if you look at the polls, minorities love socialism. And that's why California is such a cesspit. California is such a cesspit because there are so many fucking Mexicans in it. And that's the same reason that Mexico is a cesspit, you know? But we have an idea to rig up a system, you know, for them as well, where, I mean, they can only vote for, they came up with this, I didn't come up with it, but they can only vote for white people. And then their Supreme Court justices will be, they'll have like term limits, and they'll be appointed by our judicial systems, and they'll have the same, constitution and everything else. So they'll be okay. They really will. They'll have a great life, better than what we have here. But but they're not going to want to leave, and so we're going to have to blow the hell out of them with airstrikes and nuclear weapons and all of it. You know what I mean? Screw them. All they are is rats clinging to a sinking ship. Okay? That's it. And they've got the whole democratic process hamstrung because they just, and do you have any idea how many black people are on welfare? You know what I mean? I mean, that's a religion to them. And they aren't even that fucking smart, to be honest with you. Have you seen this new documentary on NBA Youngboy? And all these people are just basically, it looks like something you would see at the zoo. Okay, and they can't do any better than that. They can't do any better than that. You understand that? These people, like, it's like whenever I used to go to the gym, and I'll go to the sauna, and then lo and behold, the Mexicans will always spit on the fucking sauna floor, on a public sauna. Or if you go to certain parts of town where it's like a predominantly Mexican population, and you go to a movie, then people just they just pull out their phones. You know what I mean? They're not civil human beings. You know what I mean? I mean, you shouldn't even want that fucking shit around here anyways. Fuck that. Okay? But even if we could just absorb all their stupid trash and bullshit and just try to stay away from wherever it is that they live, at the same time, if they're allowed to vote, then they're going to destroy this fucking country. They're going to destroy this fucking country. You understand that? That we have no hope, minus getting them out of here. None. It can't work. Okay? And the white people aren't even that great. You know what I mean? I mean, just look out there. How many races of people do you see saying, I want my taxes low and I want my guns? And the Republicans are totally ignorant. They want the war on drugs and all that trash. But I mean, you still don't even find that anywhere. Except for white people, and that's it.